Welcome to Morning Devotion with Ken Gurley. Devotions designed to inspire you on your daily walk with God. Here's your host, Ken Gurley.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Devotion. We got a lot of locals have no power. We've got a lot of locals that have no internet, no Wi-Fi. That's me. Yes, I'm trying to push this through on my iPad today. We're going to see. We're going to see if this works. What a difficult season for those of you. I hope everybody is safe today. I hope you're doing well. Prayers for so many people enduring a lot of things. But we've got a great devotion for you today. The fine art of saying so long. Well, actually, goodbye. But the fine art, because it is a fine art. And spoiler alert, a spoiler alert. I just need to tell you this right now. I need to tell you, Lasan. I need to tell you, folks. Annie, Donetta, I need to tell you, we got a big announcement. I mean, a monster announcement. One of the biggest announcements I think we've ever shared coming at the end of this devotion. So stay tuned. No, I can't spoil the surprise now. But just get ready. Get ready. It's coming. Scott, Randy, it's coming. And happy you're here. And so we're thankful for what God is doing. And I've been reading some articles lately, and I don't know if you've been reading some of the same. There's a Chance article I saw the other day that over the summer, that something like, if I remember the statistic right, 1 in 5 friendships have ended over the summer over vaccines. Yeah. I mean, 2020 was called the year of lost friendships. The authors of a lengthy study said that the pandemic, isolation, the disruption of the job, relocations, passings, the political upheavals added to just nothing but a shredding of friendships. Now, you remember what I said yesterday. The enemy is the divider in chief. Don't forget it, Angie. Don't forget it, William. He wants to divide. But this year seems to be no better. More than one celebrity has publicly announced they're culling their friends. That's what phrase one of them used. They're culling their friends if they're not vaccinated. Then you've got the anti-vax group. They're no less tolerant of those that have been vaccinated. What a mess. We're in a mess. If we're going to be walking away from so many relationships, maybe we need to learn who to say goodbye to and how, and maybe throw in a why is there. I just believe we need that. We need to learn how to say goodbye. One of the sessions I took during the pandemic in my degree plan that I was on, we were required at the end of each session to say goodbye to everybody. Not just wave, not just walk out, but to actually formally say goodbye. And the discomfort I noticed it caused in my classmates who were uniformly younger than me, I realized people don't know how to say goodbye, even when they should say goodbye. I mean, sayonara, auf Wiedersehen, we're done, au revoir, adios. They can't say goodbye. And this greatest issue today, I think, is we're saying the right goodbye to the wrong people. But I'm going to get to that. Why is saying goodbye so important? Because until we truly say goodbye, we walk from darkness into the light. We say goodbye to yesterday to say hello today. Until we truly say goodbye, we can't live our life fully. We can't be fully present in today if we've not said goodbye to yesterday. Let me give you some rules, and Yolanda, others, help me here. Just throw down these rules real quick. I'm not going to spend a long time on them. 5 rules for saying the right goodbye. First, examine your heart. As I mentioned yesterday, the enemy is a whisperer, divider, slanderer, and he wants something to get lodged in your heart to wedge you away from relationships. Examine your heart. Second, take a long look at your life. If saying goodbye is stepping toward fulfilling your destiny, to making eternal impact on the lives of others, moving you in the direction of your callings and your dreams, yeah, then God may be in it. But if not, well, it's hard to say the right goodbye. So take a long look at your life. Here's number 3. Choose when, where, and to whom you're going to say goodbye. We are space-bound creatures. We do best with a sense of place. And when you say goodbye, you're losing place. You're losing a near sacred territory, a place you at home, a place you were loved, a place you were a part, a place you were cherished. Who do you need to say goodbye to? Where and when? Yes, yes. Impromptu goodbyes are never the right ones. I know, it's tempting to get it over with. Cut the tail off the dog, rip the band-aid off, fire off that letter, but choose a place. Then number 4, repeat your goodbyes. You're going to say goodbye to a person and place once, but again and again in your heart and in your mind, day after day, you will say goodbye to that person, that place, emotionally and mentally, many, many times. Isn't that really what the grief process is? It's saying goodbye over and over and over again and again and again. You said goodbye to them once, but now you're saying goodbye again and again. And 5th, and this is why it's so important to learn how to say goodbye. So number 5, you can say hello to the new. Some people have not said the right goodbye because they can't say hello to the new. I wish that life always had clear exits and entrances, clearly marked roads saying, say goodbye now, say hello here, turn here. It doesn't. And you can forget that the purpose of the right goodbye is to accept the newness that is coming into your life. Okay, there's a lot of other things that enter into saying the right goodbye, but there's 5 of them. And that's how to slowly enter into the process. But too many people, and here's what I notice, say the right goodbye, but they say it to the wrong things and the wrong people. I want to tell you when it's the right time to say goodbye. All right? The 3 groups of people you need to say goodbye to. Oh my, they're not on morning devotion. They're not here, Marlene. They're not out here, Stella Hope. And don't forget, I got a big announcement coming up here in a moment. Big announcement. Okay. Let me introduce you to the 3 people. Let me frame it with a verse. When Paul, the Apostle Paul, closed one of his many letters, he always ended with a goodbye. 2 Corinthians 13:11. Finally, brethren, farewell. New Century Version. Now, brothers, sisters, I say goodbye. You said so much in that word. Goodbye. With the apostle, you never knew if you're going to hear from him again. You didn't know if he'd be alive. You knew he was a haunted man. And so with the apostle Paul, each time he said goodbye, he didn't know if he was going to see those people again. It was a goodbye, a finality, but an opportunity. You see, numerous studies show that close relationships make for happier, healthier lives. There's no doubt why the psychologists and the counselors' lines were through the roof during pandemic. It's because people were isolated. But sometimes there may be someone in your inner circle that needs to be pushed to the outer circle. One of those frenemies. You know what I'm talking about? Is there someone in my outer circle then that should be in my inner circle? There will come on occasions the need to say goodbye to somebody, to separate oneself entirely from a relationship. You should never enter into that life. Who wants to say goodbye? Some loves are timeless. God, yeah, your mate, children, parents, family. Some loves are timeless. Others are not. It seems like some relationships come with an expiration date because they are a lesser love. I think that's why there were so many words for love in the Greek New Testament. It indicates that affection isn't always lasting, but we need that agape love, that God-like love. Sharon, Matthew, that's what we need in our life. And when we try to cling to fading flowers, ripened fruit, seasonal friendships, we risk so much because God only brought those people into our lives for a time and season. 3 times, 3 groups of people where you need to learn the fine art of saying goodbye. You ready? Are you ready for this? Okay, here we go. I want to start with Abraham. His life is a series of goodbyes. It's staggering. Abraham's story begins with God telling him, say goodbye to your homeland, or the Chaldees. Goodbye to your family. Abraham obeyed partially. He left Ur, but he took his nephew Lot with him. Soon followed a big disagreement, and you may remember. And finally, that took Lot out of Abraham's life. Time and again, God urged Abraham, say goodbye to the people who stand in my way of giving you all that you wish to have. You may be saying that's just not right. It's just not right. But this is what God is saying, that mortals can get in your way of immortality. That Abraham was a friend of God. And to be God's friend, he had to say goodbye. He was told by God to extend the gift of goodbye to a woman named Hagar, the hinderer of God's blessings. So here's the first group you need to say goodbye to, the hinderers of God's blessing. That story is found in Genesis 21. God said, I'm going to make you Abraham, the father of many nations. But Abraham and Sarah were old. They decided to help God out. And Sarah's maid Hagar was given to Abraham, and Ishmael was born. Not what God had in mind. These were hindrances to what God had intended. They were a substitute for the miraculous that God planned to give. Faithlessness reveals itself in how many hindrances we allow to hang on to our lives and to get between us and what God has for us. If our steps are indeed ordered by the Lord, shouldn't it be God? Folks, shouldn't it be God? Debbie, Wivette, shouldn't it be God who reveals his will to us? Or do we crash about here and there, making one decision another, suiting our own opinions and fancies, knowing all the time they are just flimsy facsimiles for what God has for us? Our efforts to fulfill God's plan are like pyrite to his pure gold. It's fool's gold. As Ishmael grew, I want you to notice something. As Ishmael grew, the boy mocked baby Isaac. Yes, and Abraham came to the place. He had to do something that seemed humanly impossible. He had to give the gift of goodbye. It's rough. He went to God in prayer and said, Lord, I know it's time to say goodbye. And God said, don't worry. I'm going to take care of Hagar and Ishmael. But my promise is not on Ishmael, it's on Isaac. Your substitutes mimic and hinder God's blessings. Your substitutes will eventually mock God's miracles and God's promises. And our substitutions cannot coexist. They war against another. I want you to ask yourself, Lord, just ask yourself, am I clinging to someone in my past who hinders me from receiving the blessings of God? Is this personally, intentionally seeking to hold me back? I'm not suggesting it's time to burn bridges, write them off, send them packing, but when someone's agenda for our lives differ from that of God's, we need to seriously examine that relationship, the hinderer of God's blessing. Here's the second one. Second illustration, Naomi should have never said goodbye to Bethlehem, the house of bread. But she and her husband, her 2 boys, abandoned the house of bread in the midst of famine and pagan Moab seemed a better choice. Now, years later, Naomi, to her credit, realized I made a mistake. But behind her were 3 tombstones of her husband and 2 boys. She said, I went out full. I'm coming back empty. Call me Mara. Call me bitter. How many bitter trials in our lives do we face? because we say goodbye to the wrong things. We act before we pray. Her two daughters-in-law traveled with her, Ruth and Orpah. And Ruth said, wherever you go, I will go. Your God, my God. Your people, my people. Yeah. Not so, Orpah. Not so, Orpah. Orpah, at the edge of leaving Moab, couldn't say goodbye to Moab. She kissed Naomi goodbye and turned back. There are times for needful partings. Here's the second. Say goodbye to the hinderers of God's blessing. Second, say goodbye to the doubters of God's goodness. Orpah's name is the subject of controversy. Some say it means stiff-necked. Others say it means double-minded. She is pictured as the polar opposite of Ruth, who clung to God, who stepped into her destiny, who became part of Israel's royal family and ancestors to David and to the Lord Jesus Christ. But Orpah, she's pictured as a person who doubted the goodness of God and turned back to the cruel demon gods of Moab. In her mind, better to trust the known than the unknown, the seen than the unseen. Doubters of God's goodness will get you in trouble. Jonah? What? Yeah. What about Jonah? Yeah, Ruby, Cindy, Natasha, just think about that. He was a doubter of God's goodness, nearly cost everybody their lives. He gave a whale a tummy ache. Yes. Orpah kissed her goodbye, the goodbye forever kiss. If you want to live a more spiritually productive life, kiss the doubter goodbye. You see, ultimately, boy, and I'm about to say something, this goes against our Pentecostal upbringing. Can I tell you what sin really is? Are you ready? Are you braced for it? Bridget, are you braced for it? Sherry, are you braced for it? Here we go. Sin is the suspicion that God isn't good. Yeah. That's what started in the garden. And the longer you keep that doubt in your life, the greater the iniquity will be. Your friends influence you. Give the gift of goodbye to the one who says you can't do it. It's not going to happen. Things are going to go bad. It's terrible. It's horrible. That doubter will hold you back. Do you know something? Here's a curious fact. Orpah is considered by the Jews to be the ancestress of Goliath. Ruth is the ancestress of David. So the Jews believe when those two men squared off in the field that day, one defending the name of God and relying on his own strength, those were the descendants of two women who accompanied Naomi that day. Yeah, it may seem hurtful. It may seem your world may not go on, but give those doubters the gift of goodbye. Don't hang around with those who trust in themselves more than they trust in God. How are we doing? How are we doing? Finally, I want to talk about the gift of goodbye to someone Jesus called friend. But before I do, remember, big announcement coming up in just about 3 minutes. All right? So hold on. Say goodbye to the hinderers of God's blessings. Say goodbye to those doubters. Say goodbye to the enemies of the cross. Judas was one of those friends. He stood in the way of Jesus on the cross. You remember Judas. He's the only known Judean in a band of Galileans, and it appears that Judas had a different idea of the Messiah. He didn't want a suffering lamb. He wanted a conquering lion. Some believe that Judas tried to force the Lord's hands, and surely Messiah would come out fighting at Gethsemane and overthrow Rome. Judas kissed Jesus and betrayed him. And Jesus called Judas friends. Some friends in this life prove to be nothing but enemies of the cross. Enemies of your devotion, enemies of your sacrifice, enemies of your consecration, enemies that try to hold you back from giving all. There are many potential Judases in our lives. Now, hey, I don't walk around looking at all my relationships, looking for any of these kinds of people. They reveal themselves. They always are there. They're going to cast and recast everything to suit their advantage. You pay, they play. You'll find them. They're going to be out there. Remember that John said Judas objected when Mary broke that alabaster box and anointed Jesus. He said the proceeds it could have been sold and proceeds given to the poor. But here's what John said of Judas. Not that he cared for the poor, John 12:6, but because he was a thief. He had the money box and he just helped himself to what was put in it. You see, the Judases in our lives always claim to have our best interests at heart, but they seldom further godly goals. They are thieves of possibilities. I read a report a while back that 87% of Americans claim to have had at least one toxic friendship. When interviewed, they describe toxic friendships in these categories: the narcissist, a self-absorbed person, every conversation's about them. Try to get the conversation away from them, forget it. Here's another type of a toxic friend: the chronic downer. They have never anything good or positive to say. Another type, Americans said, were the overly critical, always fault finding, always fault finding. And then here's one, the underminers. The deadly frenemy. One moment close, one moment distant, one moment supportive, next moment destructive. They get close to you only to hurt you. And then also Americans said the toxic friendship, it's the unreliable flake. It's the fair weather fan. Can't count on. Hey, that's not morning devotion, family. Donna, Douglas, that's not morning devotion, sissy. We're here. We're here for each other. Judas, however, was in a league of his own. He had a toxicity level beyond imagination. For the Bible says that Satan entered into the heart of Judas on the eve of his betrayal. Within the room, communion. Outside the room, there was a sellout. Jesus wasn't quick to give the gift of goodbye even to Judas. He knew Judas' nature for a long time. Tried to work with Judas, tried to believe the best in him. But on that fateful night of passion, Judas was granted the gift of goodbye. There are people who are enemies of the cross. No. They don't carry a cross and they don't want you to carry one either. They don't live a crucified life and they don't want you to either. Watch out. I told you 3 stories, and really they are all one. Not just because in each story somebody says goodbye, but let me go back. Let me go back and just summarize. God turned Abraham from Ishmael because he promised to bless Isaac. It was not Orpah, but it was Ruth who was to marry Boaz and give birth to Obed, who the lineage was of Jesse and then to David. And finally the son of David, who turned his back on the man who wanted to change his destiny. And all 3 gave gifts of goodbye for the same reason: that redemption story should be completed. That had these 3 not said goodbye, you and I today would not be able to say goodbye to our past and hello to a brighter future. At Calvary, Jesus gave us the greatest gift of all, the gift of being able to say goodbye to our old man in our past, to be born again, that old things may pass away and everything be made brand new. That we, who were once enemies of God, have now become his friends. And folks, that means everything. That's why we practice the fine art of saying goodbye. So as painful as it must have been for Abraham, Naomi, and Jesus, the gifts of goodbye were necessary for the blessings of God to be poured out for generations. Paul said, now, brothers and sisters, I say goodbye. The fine art of saying goodbye. I hope you've enjoyed that. I want you to share it, but here comes the big announcement. Are you ready? Okay, finally, we get to the big announcement. Some of you may recall that in 2018, we did a Holy Land cruise. The thing we were disappointed about, we wanted more time in the Holy Land. We only had 3 days. We scheduled one of these during the pandemic. It got canceled. But suddenly the trip has gotten better. We have reserved space on a trip next fall. Wow, it's going to be a journey to remember. Here's the dates. Let me give you the dates. October 26th to November 8th, 2022. Tessie will put this out to the side. It's going to be 6 days in the Holy Land, 6 days, followed by a 7-day Mediterranean cruise. And there's James Bailey has done this, and we'll put his email address. I'll put it out there. Okay, here's how it'll work. Fly to Tel Aviv, go up to Jerusalem, spend several days in Jerusalem, go up north to Galilee, and we'll be several days. Then we go to the port of Haifa, Israel, and we board the cruise ship. And 8 nights across the Mediterranean, visit some of the most historic and beautiful places in the world. And the trip ends in Barcelona, Spain. The great part is the price. It starts at $2,700. That's pretty incredible. That excludes airfare, but this far out, we do get some pretty amazing airfares as well. I think the amazing part of it all is being with one another and seeing some of the greatest sights in the world and remembering the greatest story ever told. James Bailey did the last trip for us. He's doing this trip for us. This is for First Church Morning Devotion families. My granddaughter was baptized when we were in Israel last time. I know it's during school, but it's one of those things that it is a trip of a lifetime. And so I urge you, if you want to be a part of it, we do just have once a space block. Last time, I know that as we filled our space, it gets really odd with these cruises. You start losing cabins, you start losing spaces. All that's required right now is get your deposit in. James will need a little bit of information from you. I'll put his email address out in the comment section. And also I'll post something separate. And we would love to have you on that trip if you can make it. And it's over a year in advance. So it's in late October, early November 2022. So you got time to plan for it, got time to save for it. And I know we're going to have a wonderful time. God bless you. Thank you. Share this with others. Get the word out, and may the Lord be with you. God
bless. Thank you for listening to Morning Devotion with Ken Gurley. Join us next time for another inspiring devotion. To support this ministry, please visit firstchurch.com/give.